Hello, I'm Arthur Black. Welcome to Weird Homes, a show that looks at the most unusual and bizarre homes in North America. Now, you know, most of us think of retirement as a time to relax, to kick back, maybe take up a little shuffleboard. But the folks you're about to meet, for them, the very thought of retirement leaves them cold. Take this retired railway conductor whose idea of slowing down is gearing up on a custom railway created in his own backyard. And then there's the ex-sailor who's transformed his home into a pirate's hideaway. Let's take a look at these folks who are retired, but who are in fact working harder than ever. Nothing like the sound of a freight train rolling across the countryside. Don Mihalik knows the sound well. He spent 37 years working on the railroad. When he finally retired, he discovered that he missed those good old days. Solution? Don took his work home with him. Don began as a brakeman and worked his way up to conductor. He took an early retirement offer in 1989, but those train whistles kept calling him.
Well, when I first retired, I retired in January. And that's pretty tough when you got to sit at home and not do nothing.
Don isn't the type to sit around. For years, he and his wife Midge dreamed about building their own railroad. In fact, they bought this property in British Columbia with that very thought in mind. But to have a railway, you need a train.
I was looking for a train in 1990. In 91, it come for sale in Vancouver paper. I phoned this guy up right away. He had the phone number on it. And I was second in line to get the train. So, anyways, we dickered for a while, and finally I come up with the money first, and I got it.
Don's miniature railway has everything a regular railway has, even a switching station. And of course, a railway tunnel. 550 railway ties went into the construction of the tunnel alone, all donated by his former employer, CP Rail.
There we are, just come out of my tunnel. And I started this tunnel in 1991, and I got a big excavator to dig it out. And then, first of all, I had to make sure that when you entered the tunnel, it was dark. So, you know, you can enter the tunnel. If you had it straight through, you'd be able to see the daylight in the other end. Well, I wanted to get in the dark right off the bat and not see daylight.
Once he saw the light at the end of his tunnel, Don tackled the next challenge. Now, building that tunnel was tough, but it was child's play compared to erecting this trestle. Did he do it all himself? Well, almost. His son sometimes dropped in to help out.
It's 23 feet high, 90 feet long. It's built on cement pylons there. They're 3 feet into the ground. And I poured it by hand, carried it by bucket, filled them pylons by hand, and we mixed it with a cement mixer up here. And it took me 1 year to build this trestle, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And this name here is my wife's name, Midget Trestle. I named it after her.
Midget trestle was no minor feat to build, but is it safe? Hey, you don't think Don learned a thing or two in his 37 years on the railroad?
I had an engineer from the CP Rail. He looked at it and he says, oh, you can drive a big train on it. So I guess I must have done a good job.
You did a fine job, Don Mihalik, and you brought joy to a lot of people up and down the tracks. As you might guess, the Mahalik Railway is a big draw. Close to 3,000 visitors show up each year and climb aboard. Oh, and don't worry about buying a ticket. It's free. For Don and Midge, smiles and chuckles are payment enough.
Well, we've had them from South Africa, India, all over Europe, Japan, China, Australia, and all across Canada, except for Newfoundland. We haven't got a Newfoundland person here yet. So. When you see a child happy, then you're naturally happy because they are, just nice to see that,
That's good. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks. It's
awesome. You want to go look at
Awesome.
the caboose? Yeah. Let's go look at this. How you doing?
And what do the neighbors think? Don't worry, the neighbors are on board too.
They come for train rides themselves. Yeah, they come over that hill from next door there, the chicken farm. They come over here with their whole gang, and they get their relatives coming and their families. Sometimes 30 or 40 of them come from a gang.
The number one customers are the grandchildren. Small wonder, their names are all over the railway.
The Allison Station is named after my granddaughter, and James Tunnel is named after my grandson. So when I got the name and that there, and we were starting to haul people through, James says, I'm going to charge him to go through that tunnel. It's my tunnel. That's my grandson. When he was 7 years old. That's what he said.
What's next for Don? Well, between repairs around the yard, he got a great deal on a used caboose. But it's no miniature. His caboose weighs in at 25 tons.
Well, it was at Silver Star Mountain. So they phoned me and asked me if I wanted it. And I said, sure, I wanted it. And I went up there to see it. And I said, yeah.
Of course, it was too high, too tall for to go onto the road. So we had to take the cupola off. That's the top part of the caboose. And so we went inside, my husband and I, and we said, oh, we've got to cut into this now. If we can't cut, if it's all metal, what are we going to do? Because if we start cutting it, then we've wrecked this guy's caboose, And so my husband said, oh, heck, we'll go for it. And then we took the chainsaw and started, and it did work, so.
We had her loaded at 7 in the morning at Silver Star and was up here sitting on the rails at 20 to 12. Well, I'm going to restore it to its original as soon as I get all the statistics about it, where it come from. I know it's CP rail and went to Prince George, but as soon as I get it all back to its original, I'm going to use it as people can go through and see what it's like. It's sort of like a museum.
Don gets a kick out of riding on his train, but he enjoys the challenge of building a railway even more.
The thing for me is that riding the train, even having the train, is not as important as building the stuff. That's my greatest feat, is building it.
He has to be always accomplishing something, making something, and seeing what he's done, He goes golfing once in a while, but he's always busy, but he enjoys it, and he enjoys the people and the kids and stuff. But if someone like that, you don't really retire either, because, he's got to go help them, and, so.
I pensioned off when I was 55. So I'd have probably worked right to the last day. Maybe asked for an extension.
Doesn't look as if Don Mahalik will ever graduate to a rocking chair on the front porch. Too many challenges farther down the line. Now, Karen Wise hasn't laid any railroad tracks around her place, but that doesn't mean she's been idle. Since her retirement 13 years ago, Karen's been hard at work on a rather large art project, her entire home and garden. Her specialty is collages, the weirder the better. And to think she has her mother to thank for it.
This piece was the piece that my mother gave me, which started this whole outdoor project. And it was really exciting. I think she gave it to me about, 3 or 4 years ago. And I had run out of space inside, and I didn't want to stop working. I was really on a roll, and I really felt excited. And I thought, well, I have no place for this indoors. And I love this piece, and it's from my mom, you know? And it's a unicorn, and here it's got leaves and dust and dirt caught in it. And I constructed kind of this little altar thing in front of the window, which was exciting for me. And I started building, and I started going completely crazy. And so then I started working this way. And this was really exciting because this narrow space is really dramatic for me, and it's like a gallery, a real old-fashioned gallery where you walk through a narrow space and you're surrounded by art. And I loved that, and that kept me going this way. I just kept going.
And going and going and going, clear across the property. But Karen's crowning glory so far has to be this giant sculptured concrete labyrinth.
I thought this was going to take maybe a couple of months to do. It took 10 years. And because it was exciting and wonderful, and I had the time and the energy, we just kept going and going and going and going and going. There's a hot tub back there, and there's a deck here. And it was really wonderful. I learned how to work in concrete. We did it all by hand. We hand-packed it on. I worked 4 days a week, sometimes 5 days a week in this. And we worked from early in the morning till late at night. And in summertime, we set up lights so we could see up till 9 and 10 o'clock at night. And we set up scaffolding around this. My legs were bruised for years on end.
Karen doesn't just think big when she's creating. She collects art on a grand scale, too. And what does her husband think of all this? Well,
this piece I saw sitting in a scrap pile at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco. And this was many, many years ago. And it's a head of Julius Caesar. And I went up to the gardener and I said, "Are you guys going to be throwing that out?" And he said, "Oh yeah, that's part of the scrap heap. You can take anything you want, except you have to go into the museum and you have to make a donation." And it weighed 2,000 pounds. So I set up the appointment to have it moved to my house. In those days, my husband left for work almost promptly every single day at 9 o'clock. So that morning he left late, and all of a sudden he sees this gigantic head coming up the road on a crane. But he's late for work, and my husband almost is never late, so he didn't stop or turn around and come back. He just continued on his way, and I got a phone call about 10 minutes later that said, "Hi, did you have a giant head dropped off at our house today?" And I said, "It's already here, relax, you'll see it when you get home." And he was really pissed off and hung up on me. But that's how we got this head here.
Karen collects art for what it is, not for who created it. Whether it's the work of an established artist or a struggling art student, it has to fit in at Karen's place.
For me, art has to find a spot here. It can't be imposed. It has to feel like it's always been born here.
Karen's been retired for 13 years, but she's been picking up art that struck her fancy for the past 35 years. Naturally, the collection does not stop at the doorstep.
This is my living room, my downstairs living room. It's a great room. I sit and read in this room. And then this is my bed. My cat hangs out on this bed. I think mostly because he looks beautiful on it. Orange and white cats are beautiful. His name is Ezra Pound. He's our literary effort.
When you think about it, Karen pretty well has to be retired. She hasn't got time to fit in a day job. Mission, British Columbia, home to a monastery, a handful of lumber mills, some dairy farms, and Ray Tew. Ray retired to the British Columbia coast after years of working the boats on the Great Lakes. Lots of Canadians migrate to the mild-weathered West Coast when they retire, Most of them take up boating, or golf, or gardening. Ray, he's a little different. For one thing, the revolving lighthouse on his roof tends to set him apart from his neighbors. If Walt Disney and Lord Nelson ever got together to design a house, it might end up looking like Ray's homestead. Ships to port, ships to starboard, ships above and ships below. Be it ever so nautical, there's no place quite like this pirate's den. The only thing missing are a rusty cutlass in Ray's hand and a parrot on his shoulder. It's been a few years since Ray went to sea, but in his mind, Ray's walked the decks of all manner of ships in many a different age.
Here's my house here when I first bought it. It was sort of a plain Jane compared to what it is now. But I told him I wanted the picture out of the real estate window, or else I wasn't going to buy the house. March 1990, my house in Kenora, Ontario burnt down. I just waited for the insurance company to pay me up, and I moved out of there, that coal country, and out here in July, and by August I had this house. Most of the ship stuff you see around, well, I had a little bit of time on Lake Superior, plus my grandfather was a shipbuilder, so it was in my blood to like ships. That ship's wheel that I got up above there was just too big to put in the house, so I put it on the outside. That windmill up there, it blown off there twice when the wind got so heavy it just tore it right out by the roots. My mother was really into butterflies and owls, so I took some of the patterns off her house, built these butterflies. More of these, this Daisy Duck and Donald Duck there, I made them, and some woman come along, she liked it so much, she wanted to buy them. So I had to take them off the wall and sell them to her and make another set for myself.
If Daisy, Donald, and their cartoon friends suffer from seasickness, there's no sign of it around Ray's place.
Miss Piggy here, I picked her up off the street. I can't get that washed off, it's gone dirty, but I think she works in with the other Walt Disney characters pretty good. I was thinking of putting a speaker behind it someday, but I never got around to that.
Not surprisingly, Ray's house is a regular magnet for the local youngsters. After all, how many homes feature your favorite cartoon characters marching down the eaves trough?
All the kids in the neighborhood used to call me Mr. Pirate. So I had to put the pirate's den on there so they knew where I was. That's supposed to be my picture on the door there. Ray's dive. Well, come on in here and I'll show you what I done in the backyard. First thing I done when I got here was build that gazebo. And then I went from that to this tugboat on the wall here. That's the ship that I was on in Great Lakes, Lake Superior. This girl used to rock back and forth like this as it went around, and the lights on top were flashing on and off. I got lights that flash on and off, go around in circles on the gazebo here.
A revolving lighthouse, flashing beacons. You gotta wonder what the neighbors make of Ray Chew's hideaway.
Like Herb down there in the corner, he says that the light was shining in his living room, and he always thought it was emergency vehicles out here all the time. He couldn't concentrate on his TV, so I shut it off. Then Mr. and Mrs. Payne asked me if I'd turn it back on because they sort of missed it. They couldn't go to sleep without it.
Actually, Ray Chew is a bundle of surprises and contradictions. One minute, he seems to be cruising the Spanish Main. The next has him surfing the net. Well, sort of surfing the net. That 10 of spades will go on the jack of diamonds, Ray.
You often wonder what your neighbors are thinking about you living here all alone and decorating like this. They think I've gone nuts, I guess, but I've got to do something to keep my mind occupied. What you think of my place or what you think of me for doing this?
No chance of Ray Chew ever acting retired, not with all those kids to entertain. Mind you, older folk get a kick out of Ray's hideaway too. When it comes to hanging out with a frisky pirate, you only need to be young at heart.
And this cane and this was all one piece of wood. It was like that. That was all one tree or one branch. I got it out of the river. I cut it off and had to add enough on here to get my hand onto it. And then I put a watch on there so I had time on my hands.
Ray may have time on his hands, but don't expect him to twiddle his thumbs. There's not enough time in the day for all the things Ray Chew wants to do. Retirement can play some funny tricks on you. Ray Chew never expected to be a hard-working pirate in dry dock. And Karen Wise, she's as busy as she's ever been, making additions to her collection. And Don Mahalik, he's hardly had a day off since he quit the railroad. The other railroad. Well, it just goes to show you can take the conductor out of the train, but you can't take the train out of the conductor. Don Malik, as Roy Rogers used to almost say, happy rails to you. I'm Arthur Black. Hope you enjoyed Weird Homes. See you next time.